Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to, I guess you can call this another edition of Town Hall AIA LA. I'm happy that Nancy's able to join us today. This should be hopefully informative or educational for those of you that are interested in what Nancy has to say. She has a lot of knowledge, so I think you're going to be happy with the time you spent here. Remember that the purpose for this forum is, really to share best practices regarding firm operations, staff well-being, and project delivery. In this case, we're dealing mostly with the human resource side. It's a forum of concerns, challenges, and any requests you have of AIA LA at this time is totally fair game. Also, just a reminder that on our website for the AIA LA, there are numerous links to both the state and national efforts. AIA National is very active right now on the lobbying side of things, just so you know, as it relates to looking at the next kind of stimulus bills that might come out that have to do with infrastructure and how we might get vertical infrastructure included in that plan. So, we're hopeful that that's going to help all of us at the end of the day. So I want to introduce Nancy, who I've known for a little while. I guess I can say that. Nancy Horne, AIA affiliate, founded NDH Search in 1998 and quickly established the company as one of the top recruitment firms in the nation. Her firm now stands as a leader in the architecture and design industry throughout our area, of course, and throughout the United States and worldwide. For the past 22 years, Ms. Horne and her team have built an unprecedented reputation based on integrity and process management and results. Working closely with some of the most prestigious architecture and design firms, NDH Search is a trusted confidant of the major firms in our industry. NDH Search takes special pride that many of their placements at small to mid to large size firms have assumed leadership positions in the industry. NDH Search is respected for consistently finding the right fit for their clients' dynamic needs and their candidates' professional goals. NDH Search offers consulting services in career coaching, resume and portfolio positioning, and related services, all towards the empowerment of individuals and industry clients. Nancy was born on the West Coast and raised on the East Coast, attended Boston University, worked for Massachusetts State Senator, and eventually returned to LA, where she founded NDH Search. She worked with the U.S. Embassy in Qatar as the Los Angeles liaison for the Supreme Committee for FIFA 2022, and is on the executive board of directors of LA headquarters and chairs the Community Investment Committee. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Nancy Horne.
Thank you very much, Greg. It's a real pleasure to be asked to do this, Carlo. I appreciate you asking me, and I've known both of you for a good long time, and that makes it a lot easier for me because I'm not that gifted at doing things like this, but I'm happy to have the opportunity to share the knowledge that I have. This is a very unique time in architecture and design because we are driven by community, banks, development, and collaboration. And all of those things fly in the face of COVID-19 and social distancing. So as a consequence, we have seen a tremendous downturn in hiring. And unfortunately, there have been furloughs, remote working, unemployment, things like that. But I choose to see this as an opportunity for every architect, whether they're working or not, to move themselves and their career forward by taking a pause and looking at what they would like to achieve in the next, let's say, 12 months and how to get there. I have put together a slideshow, and I'm going to put up my first slide, and I'm going to read something, so I'm going to take myself off because I'll be just reading, stop video. So here I'm talking about designing your future and having the intent that you have as an architect and how you evaluate a problem and a situation. I also want to say that I am a perfect example of an individual that has changed careers multiple times and finally found one that really suited me. My first career after college and working for the state senator was to work at Nickelodeon. And then I worked at a fashion company. And then I worked for a movie producer. And then I came and founded NDH Search. And this truly is my favorite and most exciting job, career I've ever had. And it's been 22 years. NDH Search is a mirror of what's happening in the industry right now. On March 2nd, probably much like many of you, we had 25 active searches across the United States, including Denver, Houston, Phoenix, Chicago, Detroit, LA, San Antonio, and Seattle, and several contracts for hiring with clients across the nation waiting to be signed. On March 10th, every single job we had was put on hold, and the contracts were, our jobs were put on hold indefinitely, and the new contracts were not signed. That makes me a perfect person that is going through exactly what you are experiencing if you've been downsized or if you're considering that this is a time for you to make a change. I believe that the opportunity to make a change in your career or to reevaluate what you've been doing, what you might be missing in your day-to-day work, you're finding that maybe there's a specialty that you don't have that someone else has and you would like to have more opportunities like that. There's an evaluation, just like when a client, a stakeholder comes in and sits down and talks to a team of people and says, this is my issue, this is my goal. And that is why on this slide, I say that you as the individual is the stakeholder. Your career and creating your next opportunity is the scope of work, and so on and so forth. So as you, this will be available later, but I'd rather not just read every single word on the slide. I also believe that there are so many unique skills that architects have that others don't, that it's important for you to realize if you're having any concerns or not acknowledging how incredibly smart and talented and future thinking you are as a professional, that you can also be that way in your career. And future thinking is what it takes right now as we leave our house to take a walk around the block with a mask, with sanitizer, with gloves, with a degree of fear. And it's important for us to leave that at the door and stay focused on the future and the positivity of what is ahead of us, and not let that scare us so much that we can't gather ourselves to build our next step. So here I talk about the management skills, the ability to convey and ideas that have not been visualized yet, and to take abstract ideas and different ways to present them to a potential client. And that would be you. You are your own client today. And I believe that if you look at this list, that you can add more things that I have not included, but are very important, and what you bring to every single meeting you attend or participate in. Let's see. One of the things that I have found has always been very important is staying connected when I'm trying to create a new solution for an issue, and not trying to only do it by myself. This is a very good thing for architects because it's such a collaborative type of business that you are used to turning to experts in different areas for sheer walls, for curtain walls, for water, for elevators, for all kinds of things that I don't even know what it would be, but it is not a singular business. And that is a very good thing for putting together a plan for finding your next opportunity. Here I talk about networking and utilizing the AIA and the committees that are listed on the AIA Los Angeles website, different associations for things that you might be specifically interested in. If it's healthcare, if it's workplace, if it's multifamily housing, get deeper into learning about those things and become expert in it. And I know that you have the ability to become expert because this is what you all do. Every time you have a brand new project, you become expert in what is needed for that project. I think that educating yourself is going to be the most important thing. And you are the only one that can look at your experience and see that maybe you didn't get your license. Maybe you want to be LEED certified. Maybe you want to be WELL certified. Maybe there are things that you could add during this time. One of the things that I think is important is becoming a coveted worker. It's a term that Cecilia Estelano used in a previous town hall. And becoming a coveted worker requires an expertise that others don't have. And this is a wonderful time to become expert in how different market sectors are changing. Multifamily housing will be there when the downturn turns around. Workplace will be there and how a workplace change. And there are people that have PhDs in workplace strategy and they have a tremendous amount to share with anybody on the team. And they are also good people to reach out to at this time. And you can find them on LinkedIn, which is just a fantastic tool. So let me just talk about LinkedIn because it's my very favorite. And one of the important things about LinkedIn, I feel like I'm doing a commercial for the website, but people that sign on to LinkedIn and put up a profile are open to being contacted. You can reach out to them. It doesn't mean that they'll accept your invitation to connect, but you can reach out to them and they are visible. A lot of research goes into how to use LinkedIn to identify the people that you would like to meet or whose career you have regard for and would like to emulate. One of the things that I was saying in our prep before this started was I was talking about Cameron Sinclair, who he and Kate Storr started Habitat for Humanity. And I am certain that when he graduated with his Bachelor's of Architecture in 1998, he had a very ideological view of what his next 10 years would be like, and building buildings that would be used by the public and by residences, personal homes and custom residential and things like that. But with the downturn in 1998 and it being very hard to find work, he had to look inside and consider what he could do with his skills and his personal passion. And this is a time for that same view inside of ourselves about what is personal and what we feel passionate about and how to meld that part of you with your professional side. There's a very, on the same slide, there's a tool called Clifton's Strength Finder. It costs $19.99, and I would suggest if you wanted to spend the money that you take this very brief test, and it will help to inform you about what kind of communicator you are, what work environment you like, what excites you professionally, things like that. It's very, very interesting, and probably many things that you already know about yourself, but there may be some nice surprises, and it's only $19.99. As far as expanding your knowledge, always updating your CV and your portfolio. It's a time to update it, redesign it, not have it look like it was done by an accountant, which, trust me, I have gotten many resumes across the time that they had no design, no feel, no beauty to them. And that's not pink paper with perfume on it. That is just beautiful fonts, beautiful layouts. And you have time for that now if you've been downsized, or if you know that you're about to be furloughed or things like that, that you can take a time to really represent yourself. And also you'll have time to gather the images that you'd like to have in your portfolio. I also encourage you that within your market sector that you look around your office and you see the people that are not being let go because they are important to the success of a project, and see what kind of things that they have in their career that you might not have, and it could have been a reason, a potential reason for why they were chosen to stay and you were furloughed. It's a good piece of research and knowledge to gain. There are architectural licenses to be had. There are CLE classes that you can do. There's accreditations of all kinds, which are listed right here. Let me see. I also think that it's very, very important that you seize the day. I have to do that myself every day, which is I have to get myself together. I have to take a walk around the block. I have to get out of just being at home if I didn't have work, and to create my next step. Creating a schedule with action items, connect with colleagues. Most of you have been working with many people that's at your left, your right. You'd have lunch with, you'd have coffee with in the morning. I encourage you, just because you are working separately or not working together anymore, that you still connect with those people. They were important to you then, and they can be important to you now as emotional support and professional colleagues. Try not to let this scare you. It's not going to happen forever. The more you step outside of your fear, the better you'll feel about yourself and the more hopeful you will be. And that's exactly the type of person that this economy needs when things pick up. There's a lot of online learning. There's Udemy, there's lynda.com, there are all kinds of things that maybe you've wanted to learn GarageBand, or, there are things that are good for your other part, your personal side, the part that wants to grow but has been working so hard. Some of you have worked 50, 60 hours a week for many years and have just prayed for a breath. And here is the time to take advantage of that. So I thought it'd be good just to include the value of adapting at this time. So I did a little research and I wanted to know what the firms were that were converting the Javits Center into a medical center. And that was HOK, and there's a link on this new slide to the story of how they did it in the process. Very, very interesting. HKS, thank you, Greg, came up with an emergency plan for converting hotels into hospital rooms, and very urgently needed. And then KPF, BIG, Handel, Grimshaw, and others are using their 3D modeling equipment to make masks and things like that. But trust me, 2 months ago, not one of these companies thought that that's what they would be doing today. They had to pivot and adjust and adapt. So that's kind of what is being put on us now, and that's where our success will come. NDH Search does a tremendous amount of consulting to clients and to individuals with their careers, changing specialties, how to present themselves. We are not what would be considered a job board. we just don't do that. We are more of a consulting service for our clients and our candidates. But here's a list of websites that, of course, you probably all know already. Also, the firms each individually have websites, and I know that you've all looked for jobs before, so none of these are going to be new to you. Using LinkedIn to reach out, it's very, I know that there are a lot of principals that are very, very busy right now, and project managers tremendously busy, but they would like to know you, but they would want to be approached in a reasonable way, not a not intensely, but it's a nice thing to do to link in and just say, I admire your work. I'd love to know more about the work that you do and your background, and may I send you my resume in the time to come? Or I know that when things have been slow for my company, I will set a goal of linking in with 50 people a day. And it will be people that would be in positions that would have a need for my kind of business. So it would be hiring principals, managing principals, HR people. Great candidates like you are going to be needed the moment things turn around. So for you to continue to grow who you are, what you do, and make yourself more valuable and more hireable after this calms down is the goal of my talk. John Moody of Moody Nolan, they have 12 offices across the country, said, hoping for the best and planning for the worst. The 2008 crisis showed that there is a value in diversifying project types for the firm and for the candidate. Architecture by its very nature has an ideological aspect to the goal of the project. How can you take that ideology to the next level at this time using your best abilities and greatest aspirations? I think that that's all that I have right now, and I would so welcome questions and be happy to talk to you.
Nancy, before we move on to the Q&A portion, did you want to ask any of the polling questions?
Oh, I would love to, yes.
All right.
Okay, so do I ask them or do you ask them?
I will put them up on the screen and then you can talk about them while they're up. So I'm going to launch the first one.
Okay.
And you'll see it.
Okay. So I've asked to know who this audience is that I'm speaking to. If you're working remotely full-time, are you furloughed, laid off, or other? For those that want to, can you respond? Is that how that works?
Yep. And then we'll just wait until we get a good percentage here.
Okay. Okay. I know that I've recently learned that furloughed is you're being held for returning, and you'll be knowledgeable to the company that has furloughed you. It does not always mean that you're able to get unemployment, but sometimes it does. That was a new term. I'd heard it before, but never really encountered it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it looks like we're at 77%, so I'm going to end the poll so we can see the results.
Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
So 48% are working remotely from home, 13 furloughed, 23 laid off, and 16 are other. I'd be curious to know what the other is, but maybe you can send in a question to Corrine and let us know what other is. The next polling question is, what is your current market sector experience? I'm curious if you are in corporate commercial, multifamily housing, and or mixed use, healthcare, higher ed, civic, or other. Multifamily housing, as it might have been Greg who had said to me that, or I read, I'm not sure, that multifamily housing is likely to come back at the same level it was because the banks and the interest rates will be lower, and it will be an encouraging place for the market to continue to grow and to finish projects. And that healthcare is such a long-term business and construction process that some of the holds that we've seen or delays in continuing of construction will not affect the length of the project, which can go on seemingly forever.
Okay, so I'm going to end this poll.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Corporate commercial, 31. Multifamily housing. That is a surprise to me that multifamily housing and mixed use is only 17%. That is kind of news to me. And corporate commercial, I'm wondering if it is interior architecture or if it is core and shell for corporate commercial. It could also be repositioning. It could be all kinds of different things. And then healthcare, higher ed. Okay, all right, thank you. And then the last one is, what is your current job title and licensure status? Project manager, project architect, designer, architect, intermediate, professionally licensed. We find that over the years that someone that graduates with their MArch or their BArch and don't get licensed within the first 5 years, that it's unlikely that they will ever get licensed, which is a shame because being licensed can really raise your value to a company, your input to a project, and certainly it affects your salary.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll.
Okay. Yay, 43% are professionally licensed. We like that. That's very good. And more senior people are here. Okay, project manager, project architect. Okay, that's great, thank you. That really helps me with understanding more the people that are on the call. My team and I are available for receiving resumes, emails, questions about your next steps in your career, and any questions about what you suggest your next move is, and if you're thinking of interesting and exciting things to change in your career.
So we'd like to open up this point to the Q&A, and we'd love to hear from you. We know a lot of you have questions, and we can also bounce off each other to help each other right now through this time. So please send your questions over to the chat. I realize some of these, it might be a little sensitive, so if you just wanted to use the chat, that's totally fine. Or raise your hand. In the meantime, if Will or Greg has anything to add or questions for Nancy while people start thinking of their own questions.
Yeah, this is Will Wright. Thank you so much, Nancy, for your presentation. You know, one question I have, and you know, maybe no one here has an answer, but you know, Los Angeles, we're in a pretty unique position comparatively so with regards to all the self-funded tax measures we've recently passed. So therefore, our market might be a bit of a microcosm compared to other, you know, metroplexes. And, you know, with Measure M, Measure H, Measure A, Measure W, I'm wondering if you see other firms relocating to Los Angeles while the opportunity is, you know, more desirable here, and what, you know, where the connection between our local market and our local architectural talent, you know, intermixes. And I'm just wondering if you've had a good sense of that. Is anyone reaching out to you for joint ventures, especially?
Well, I think I understand the question. I do see a lot of companies, even Woods Bagot open down here, and they're slowly closing down San Francisco. Well, not completely, but certain areas. I remember Banish was here, and I think that they've closed. Benoit is here from London. There are a lot of firms that are, Grimshaw open from New York. There are all kinds of companies that are opening here. I don't know that they're looking for joint ventures. I feel like they're stomping on the roses and just want to get to the project. So years and years of companies here in Los Angeles that have built very deep relationships with developers, banks, government are being, becoming shoulder to shoulder with new companies that are trying to take some of the work. And they are fresh and new and the new girl on the block, and they can be appealing. But LA is, for as many people that move here from everywhere in the world to start anew, it doesn't always happen that way with architecture firms. We still like to see who's here for long and steady. We like our depth of relationship. In that way, we're like a Raleigh, we're like a Salt Lake City. We might look like we're sassy for new people coming in and new companies and things like that, but we really do have more trust in the long-term relationships and deeply held depth of knowledge and relationship. Does that help? I don't know. They might be moving here to do hospitality. There, Greenland came and kind of went, and, there's all things like that, but I don't see joint ventures myself. I don't tend to see that aspect.
Well, I thank you. I mean, that helps. I was really thinking about more when a firm in name only moves to Los Angeles and then they need the talent, the human resources that's already here so that they have that local connection. I think
yes, we get calls like that, like Methuen.
Yeah,
Methuen. We put, NDH Search put the Methuen Hodges Fund deal together.
Yeah.
So we were able to help them build their office and things like that. But we do get those calls for new offices. But to begin with, many of these new companies that are coming to town, they'll have one or two people to start off with. They'll have business development and a senior person, and maybe they're bringing somebody from corporate, but they don't tend to staff up until they have a project. And if it was a project office, then that's totally different than deciding to open a new, chapter, not chapter, but a new office here in LA.
Great. So we do have one question here, and I'm just going to read it because it was sent privately. Does the NDH connect professionals to alternative professional relationships like part-time, freelance, etc.?
We do a lot of contract work.
Okay.
We had people over at Disney until the entire Imagineering was furloughed on April 17th. It was a sad day. But when I see the news and Disneyland having, chain and lock on it. But yes, we do a lot of contract work. Not so much part-time, we do contract.
Okay.
In quotes, staffing kind of things, short-term, 1 month, 6 months, things like that. We have a whole division for that.
Okay. I think that kind of answers both of those. We're just still waiting to hear from people with questions. I'm sure that Nancy can help you guys out. And then Greg, if you want to chime in at all.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I have been, following a lot of is the business kind of news cycle, and both kind of international and local, because a lot of these banks are tied directly to international funds and vice versa. But the one thing I was reading, and I think it was, if my facts are correct, so I think it was Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan had something similar, but basically in terms of the economy, for what it's worth, you could look at this as optimistic, I guess, but this second quarter of our year, they're projected, which is probably not a mystery to everybody, a 25% downturn from what they considered baseline. So a 25% reduction in GDP, which obviously is kind of why we're in the situation that we're in right now. In Q3 though, which is in theory around the corner in July, they're expecting that number to change to 15%. So that's a 10% increase, if you think of it that way, in GDP from the lowest point based on all these metrics, right? And then in Q4, they're looking at about 7%, 6 to 7%. So, and that was within 1% of each other on most of these. And I think you can find some of this online, but it just shows that there is the potential between now and what is that, October, I guess, of nearly 18% like rebound on some of the workload and GDP. So, you know, we, as a larger firm, we definitely track this stuff because it's, you know, we have a lot of impact from, because we do so much cross-sector work. But, you know, at the end of the day, what you have to remember, and I remember like 2008 and 9, when there was financial problems that caused all of this, at the end of the day, banks make money by lending money, right? I mean, that's their single biggest source of revenue, is to loan money and make investments. So at the end of the day, all of the folks in that side of the industry are going to look for kind of a positive sign to put money back into the economy. I'm not talking about nationalized money. I'm talking about institutional money. So we're hoping that these numbers are going to hold through. Our firm, I know, is counting on a lot of this in terms of our planning for staffing and stuff through the rest of the year. So for what it's worth.
I think that we're going to see a lot of the AEC firms growing more because of the infrastructure work that's being done that is not stopping because it's government funded. So the architects that are working at AECOM, Jacobs, Parsons, CH2M Hill, all of those. I'm not sure CH2M Hill still exists. I'm not sure, but I do see that there are certain sectors that are growing no matter what. Now, they may not be the elegant design for the LA police headquarters. They may not be a courthouse in Las Vegas. They may be more kind of meat and potatoes that has to be done, and but they're being done hand in hand with engineering. And so I think looking to companies that are architecture, engineering companies, maybe also construction, those are more likely to have a growing need and a continuing need. So maybe that's also where the, excuse me, the economy will carry them.
All right, we do have a few other questions that have come in. And the first one is from Wayne. Wayne, if you want to unmute yourself, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. I'm not sure if my internet connection is okay. Can you hear me?
You're great.
Sure. So I'm not sure if this is the right forum, but I just wanted to ask the question. As I've gotten further into my project management role, senior PM, et cetera, and more away from the initial design development roles in my junior career, I'm curious how you recommend or see portfolios refresh. I'm trying to refresh my portfolio, but as I'm getting into more strategic roles, I'm running into a roadblock of how I put that into portfolios, or what employers want to see.
I would say that they are not looking for drawings from you. I'd say that they want to know what your responsibility was. So on each project, maybe give it 2 images that you think are stellar and represent what you like about the project the most, but then include a maybe bullet point index on that same page or pages telling exactly what your responsibility was. Depends if it is confidential, but if you can say how many square feet, the location, the number of city or state organizations that you had to interact with. Was the building on top of the subway system? Did you have to get involved that way, and entitlements and things like that? Those are the kinds of things that they're looking for. And they want to know just how deeply you got involved And of course, they don't expect you to be part of the design development, but the execution of beautiful design and all the issues that come with building a beautiful building.
You might want to also, because if your role as manager is to really maintain a project budget, a staffing, and also profitability, maybe you can bracket the profitability of some of the work that you've done. Talk about how the project performed and put real names next to these projects, like client names, because if you're the PM, you're likely having direct contact with the owner in some form or another. So I think there's value to that, to people.
I do too. I think that is, it speaks very highly of your ability to interact with high-level developers, owners, things like that. And what we have seen over all of these years, that it truly is the project manager that brings back the client, because you all deal with the biggest problems, issues, things that were not part of the original plan that need to be adapted or changed. And you keep the relationship with the client going smoothly and forward while dealing with very difficult things. And that's why I completely agree with Greg, is that if you include the names of the clients and all of those other things that he said, it's very attractive, very appealing, and really gives you a lot of credibility going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah, great question too. I think a lot of people, I know they don't, it's hard to, boost your resume for some of us when you've done such great work. So one question, very different here. We have, can you speak about the appropriate language to discuss with potential employers when they've been fired or laid off largely due to COVID-19? How do you really frame this when you're speaking to your future employers?
I think that you have to be completely straightforward with them, that it was, that you were an economic casualty of the virus and the hiring downturn and the clients putting projects on hold. I think it's very important to be quite forthright and honest, because they know you were let go in March of 2020 and you're looking for a job, and it's September, October, November, and you're still looking for a job. Yes, we're all in the same boat, and they've been living it also. The other thing is that this is an opportunity to rework your resume or your CV into what we call a skills resume, which doesn't focus so much on the amount of time you spent at a job, but what the skills are. So that's when you see a resume that at the top, there may be 10 bullet points of what your skills are. And then below that are details of either the project, well, both projects and companies that you worked for and on. And it takes the focus away from, you were hired in December and let go in March. It's, and that is obviously COVID, but I still see resumes that were 2006 to 2008, and then somebody didn't have a job until 2010. And it becomes a verb. It was not a verb, but however you describe it, but 2008 happened. That's what happened on my resume, the economy. So you are absolutely forgiven for that being let go of.
No other questions right now, but I'm sure we'll get more to come. One question I had was for us that haven't been laid off, but our coworkers have, and this can also be a communal discussion. How can we support our coworkers who have been furloughed to make them still feel like they're part of the company, although they can't check their emails? And how can, or our friends that have been laid off, is anybody has any suggestions with that? Or Nancy, obviously.
Well, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that it's such a collaborative environment that everybody works in, that it's very important to stay in touch with everybody that you've been working with that has been laid off, and just to be very compassionate about what it's like to one day be sitting right next to you and the next not. In 2008, we didn't have Zoom and FaceTime as readily available. So connecting and having a cup of coffee with them, or, you know, while they're having a sandwich outside their office or on their patio or something, it's very important to connect and to be very empathic to what it's like to be no longer at the office and knowing that your friends are still there, or, you know, really going through a troubled time. It's very important to be empathic. And there's nothing that, I mean, you can have them to your front yard and sit 6 feet away and things like that, or, but it's a very difficult time. What, do you have suggestions? Anybody else, please?
I think it's a tricky subject. Sometimes it's hard for people to open up. So again, if you just want to use the chat box and chat me a question, I'm sure Nancy can give a lot of guidance to you today, or you can reach out to her afterwards as well if you feel like that's a little bit more appropriate. Oh, we have a question. I found something to talk about. How I use time between jobs and have free classes and seminars. Dennis, do you actually want to address the group about this? If so, please unmute yourself. There we go. Nope, I guess he doesn't. I mean, there are a ton of free classes and seminars out there. I think that's a great way to keep your to keep knowledgeable about what's going on. Nancy, do you have any ones to suggest that you've seen come across for this field?
Well, I know that Udemy has Revit, and I think lynda.com has Deltek. I think Deltek is a great program to get to know, especially if you're a project manager, if you're in a smaller firm that's not using a scheduling and financial program like Deltek. That's a great program to learn about. I know it's not sexy, I know it's not designed, but it is the backbone of good billing and good tracking. And that is always needed in any job you have. I know that I think Carlo had mentioned on another call that we had that the AIA Los Angeles has a lot of resources and links to Autodesk and all kinds of tools available. I do want to mention that we've had candidates that have not gone from AutoCAD to Revit. And all of our clients are only interested in Revit candidates at this time. But one of the things that's very important is that these AutoCAD candidates have been good, long employees of a company, and they have given a lot of time and should not be overlooked because their company was not able to or had a desire to change over to Revit. They couldn't afford it, their clients didn't need it. We have a client in Nashville, they do healthcare in the Southeast region. They're not on Revit. They're doing hospitals and they're not on Revit, but they know in order to, you know, move forward. So they hired us to do a BIM leader. But I just know that getting up to speed on any 3D program will help those that are only doing AutoCAD now and doing great work in AutoCAD, but it doesn't have to be current work.
So Dennis couldn't unmute himself, but he recommends that LA County has free Lynda classes in project management.
Great.
It's one thing to check out.
Great.
Well, I don't want to force people to have questions today. I understand it is, oh, wait, I have another question. Or an answer to a question. Hector, if you want to unmute yourself, please do. As someone who's recently left their full-time job to begin freelance work, I found that signing up to any and all webinars helps fill the day between work and making sure that you pick up new things throughout the day. 100%. And, you know, if anybody has any, you know, any webinars for the AIA to know about, that would be, we would love to hear from you. So you can definitely share those links with us as well.
I also think that podcasts are fantastic, and there is a lot of knowledge to be learned, and that not every learning, not everything in architecture is learning visually, that there's other kinds of learning to be done. And so to keep that in mind as you look at how to spend your time.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Nancy, so much. I'm going to hand it off to Greg to give you a formal, but one thing that I would like to do, and we did this at our last webinar, and it felt really good. So I am going to unmute everybody for a minute, and we're all going to clap together. If I can make sure that can we do it? Everybody claps together and you can hear everyone clap, and it feels so nice.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And if I left anything out or you feel that I can be of help or guidance, please do get in touch. And here's my contact information. And Steve Tanner's known me for 20 years. And so he has my contact information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I think that's all we have. We will have more of these, as you probably can tell. The series will keep going as long as we need to keep going. And if you have any suggestions or topics or things you want to know about, please share those with the AIA office. I guess just stay safe and well right now.